Trump's desperate snap standoff. Defying judges to starve the poor while tariffs teeter on SCOTUS knives. Edge. By Santiago, D.C., Maria, November 5, 2025. Listen up, because if you thought Donald Trump's second stint in the White House was going to be all golden escalators and backslapping deals, yesterday's meltdown proves you're dead wrong. Picture this. The guy's backed into a corner tighter than a bad blind date, with a federal judge slapping down an order to cough up billions for food stamps. And what does he do? He grabs his phone, fires off a Truth Social rant vowing to ignore the whole damn thing, and leaves 42 million Americans, that's 1 in 8 of us, wondering if their kids will eat this month. SNAP benefits will be given only when the radical left Democrats open up government, which they can easily do, and not before, he bellowed, like some tin pot dictator holding a grocery line hostage. It's not just tone deaf. It's straight up cruel, a blatant thumb in the eye of the judiciary that's got legal eagles from Providence to D.C. screaming about constitutional crises. And get this, it's all unfolding as his precious tariff empire wobbles before the Supreme Court today, where even his hand-picked justices are side-eyeing his power grabs. Trump's not leading. He's lashing out, turning the Oval Office into a bully's sandbox where hunger's just another bargaining chip. Let's rewind the tape on this snap fiasco, because it's not some isolated tantrum. It's the latest chapter in Trump's war on anything that doesn't bend to his will. We're 37 days into this God-forsaken government shutdown, the longest in history, all because Trump and his MAGA minions won't budge on border wall bucks while Democrats hold the line on basics like keeping the lights on. Federal workers are scraping by without pay, national parks are crumbling under trash piles, and air traffic is a powder keg waiting to blow. But SNAP, that's the sacred cow for millions scraping by on minimum wage gigs or fixed retirements. We're talking $8 billion a month to keep shelves stocked for working moms in Detroit, seniors in Phoenix, and vets in Philly. Last week, U.S. District Judge John J. McConnell, Jr. In Rhode Island, a no-BS Obama appointee who's handled everything from mob busts to corporate dust-ups, dropped the hammer. He issued a temporary restraining order, basically telling the USDA, "You've got $4.65 billion in contingency funds sitting there like forgotten change in the couch. Use it for partial November payments and figure out the rest. Pronto." The administration blinked at first. Monday, they filed papers admitting they'd dip into those funds for partial payouts, even as they whined about legal hurdles and reconfiguration delays that could stretch weeks. Plaintiffs, a ragtag coalition of nonprofits, cities like Providence and Baltimore, and faith groups like the Rhode Island State Council of Churches weren't buying the half measures. They fired back in court. This isn't compliance. It's a stall tactic to let families go hungry for political points. And they had a point. Partial benefits mean prorated EBT cards think $200 instead of $400 for a family of 4, enough for milk and ramen, but not much else when grocery prices are up 25% since the pandemic. By Tuesday morning, Trump, fresh off a Mar-a-Lago brunch, no doubt couldn't resist the spotlight. His post hit like a gut punch, contradicting his own lawyers and flipping off McConnell's gavel. Defiance, you bet. The Rhode Island plaintiffs looped back to court within hours. The president's words confirm they're holding full benefits hostage for leverage. This is partisan poison, not policy. White House flacks scrambled like roaches under a light. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, that fresh-faced MAGA mouthpiece, who looks like she stepped out of a Stepford Wives casting call, hit the briefing room podium, insisting, "We're fully complying with the order." But when pressed on Trump's tweet, crickets turned to spin. He meant future funding, not this month's. Folks, it'll take time. States need to rejigger systems. Bull. The USDA's own filings admit they could shift funds from other pots to cover the full $8 billion plus admin costs. This isn't logistics, It's leverage. Trump's betting that starving the poor will force Schumer's hand on a clean funding bill, no wall strings attached. But here's the rub. Even his own team looks shell-shocked. Sources whisper that aides' jaw dropped when the Post went live a rogue move that blindsided the lawyers who just promised the judge cooperation. It's classic Trump. Shoot from the hip. Let the chips fall on everyone else's plate. And the fallout, it's rippling like a stone skipped across a frozen lake. Rep. Summer Lee, that firebrand from Pittsburgh who's been hammering food insecurity since day one, didn't mince words. Trump's decision to openly defy a court order and block food assistance is unconscionable. He's willing to sacrifice kids, seniors, and working families for a win he can't get at the table. She's not alone. Senate budget, Dems torched the GOPs, finger-pointing Republicans claiming Dems defunded SNAP 14 times with cold facts. GOP slashed $186 billion from the program. Trump has the emergency cash and power. Now he's thumbing his nose at judges to play politics. On X, it's a dumpster fire of outrage. Everyday folks venting about empty pantries, activists calling it immoral cruelty. And even a few red state holdouts muttering that weaponizing hunger ain't conservative values. Food banks from Chicago to LA are bracing for a deluge lines already snake around blocks. Volunteers stretched thinner than the benefits themselves. In Providence, where this all kicked off, local leaders like Mayor Jorge Elorza are mobilizing emergency stockpiles, but it's a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. These aren't abstractions, one church coordinator told me, voice cracking. These are grandmas skipping meds to buy formula. But zoom out, and this snap standoff is just exhibit A in Trump's broader assault on the rulebook. Defying courts isn't a bug in his system, it's the feature. Flashback to March, when he invoked the dusty 1798 Alien Enemies Act to boot 200 alleged Venezuelan gangbangers to El Salvador mid-flight, no less ignoring a D.C. judge's halt order because, oops, the planes were over international waters. Judge James Boasberg found probable cause for contempt, but the White House spun it as technicality. Fast forward to April. Another judge, Paula Zinnes, threatened sanctions for dragging feet on repatriating a deportee, only for Trump to huddle with El Salvador's Bukele and declare, no takebacks. Legal scholars are sounding alarms. This is testing the fences, one told The Guardian, probing how far executive muscle can flex before it snaps the separation of powers. Chief Justice John Roberts, that institutionalist who's clashed with Trump before, issued a rare public smackdown in March. Threats to defy lawfully entered judgments undermine the judiciary's independence. Even Mike Davis, Trump's loudest legal cheerleader, admits it's a high-wire act. The president has a duty to ignore unlawful orders that endanger lives, but concedes open defiance could tank his legacy. Why now? Why this hard pivot to scorched earth? Simple. Trump's cornered like a fox in a henhouse fire. The shutdown's his baby, he owns it. Shutdowns were his first-term calling card, but polls show independence bolting, approval dipping to 38% as holiday hunger looms. Midterms next year. GOP senators are already whispering mutiny, fresh off slapping down his filibuster-nuking pleas. And today, the Supreme Court's oral arguments on his tariff blitz could be the knockout punch. Back in early 2025, Trump declared a national economic emergency. Under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, EEPA, slapping 25 to 60% duties on imports from China to Canada, everything from iPhones to Canadian lumber. Raked in $151 billion by summer. Sure, but lower courts, 3 of them ruled it overreach. Congress holds the tax purse, not the prez. Businesses from toy makers to wine importers sued, arguing it's a stealth tax hiking prices on everyday stuff amid inflation's bite. The SCOTUS showdown's electric. Solicitor General John Sauer, Trump's pit bull in pinstripes, warned a loss means catastrophic refunds up to $750 billion, diplomatic meltdowns, and ruination for U.S. leverage. Trump himself hyped it on Truth Social. If we lose, we'll be defenseless against the majors China, EU, richest country. Gone. But justices aren't biting easy. Neil Gorsuch grilled sour. What stops a president from vetoing Congress's pushback forever? Sonia Sotomayor hammered the Constitution. This is taxation without representation article, I says Congress. Even Brett Kavanaugh, Trump's boy, probed historical precedents like Nixon's short-lived tariffs. Neil Katyal, arguing for the businesses, nailed it. EPA for sanctions on rogue states, not blanket taxes on allies. A dissent from Obama appointee Richard Taranto in the appeals court protrump surprisingly might sway conservatives, but whispers say the court's skeptical. If they strike down the tariffs, it's not just refunds. It's a blueprint for curbing executive overreach, from drones to deportations. Tie it back to Snap, and the pattern screams. Trump's flailing because his chaos playbook's cracking. Tariffs were his beautiful fix for trade deficits brought jobs, maybe a few but spiked costs for farmers and factories, fueling the very inflation he rails against. Senators like McConnell and Collins already teamed with Dems to rebuke his emergency tariff powers 3 times last month. Now, with SCOTUS looming, he's doubling down on defiance to rally the base. See, the deep state judges, Dems, they're out to get us. But it's backfiring. Even Fox is running segments on shutdown fatigue, and red state governors are pleading for SNAP cash to avert riots at food lines. Hillary Clinton piled on from her perch. Trump's pausing gold and marble White House renos to defy a judge and let kids go hungry. Nero would be proud. Oof. What's the end game? Courts aren't powerless, but enforcing on a defiant prez is dicey. Contempt. Sure, civil fines to coerce compliance, maybe even jail for underlings, but Trump's DOJ runs the marshals. Criminal contempt. That's impeachment territory, and with a GOP House. Fat chance. But public pressure's the real vise. If EBT cards run dry next week, expect marches from soup kitchens to state houses. Dems are teeing up enforcement motions in Rhode Island and D.C., demanding full funding and daily compliance reports. Meanwhile, Trump's tariff gamble hangs by a thread, a loss there guts his America First swagger, forcing deals with Congress he hates. Folks, this isn't governance, it's governance by grievance. Trump's cornered because his art of the deal was always more art than deal bluster over blueprints. The shutdown hurts everyone, but snap defiance. That's targeted cruelty, hitting the vulnerable to shield his ego. We've got a constitution for a reason. Checks on kings, not enablers. As one ex-user put it raw. Trump to 42 million, eat shit. If he pushes this mutiny, it'll boomerang, eroding trust in courts, cratering his polls, and handing Dems a 2026 cudgel. Even his allies know. Defy too far, and the House crumbles. America, we're watching a slow-motion wreck. Time to demand better than a toddler with nukes and a grudge. Trump's cruel snap squeeze. Banning grocery discounts to starve out the poor while the shutdown drags on. Look, if you needed fresh proof that the Trump White House views everyday Americans as collateral damage in their endless game of political chicken, yesterday's bombshell from the U.S. Department of Agriculture should seal the deal. We're talking a straight-up directive to grocery stores across the country. No discounts for SNAP recipients, period. Not during sales, not on clearance racks, not even a buy one get one on canned beans for folks scraping by without their food stamps. This isn't some bureaucratic mix-up or a footnote in the fine print. It's a calculated gut punch, hitting the 42 million people who rely on the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program right in the stomach as the government shutdown stretches into its 38th day. Trump's team, ever the masters of misery, claims it's to prevent overcharging. But come on, that's code for we're holding hunger hostage to force your hand on the border wall. Families are skipping meals. Kids are going to bed with growling bellies, and the administration's response. A big, fat, tough luck stamped on any lifeline. This isn't governing. It's cruelty dressed up as policy, and it's high time the courts hell. Maybe even Congress step in and shove those emergency funds down their throats before real lives turn into real tragedies. To unpack this mess, you have to step back into the swamp that's become Washington's default mode since Trump reclaimed the Oval Office. We're deep into what experts are calling the shutdown apocalypse, a standoff that's already outlasted any in American history. It all boils down to the same tired script. Trump demands billions for his vanity project, that so-called border wall, now rebranded as a national security fortress after the first one's art of the deal flop. Democrats, holding the line in a divided Congress, refuse to budge without protections for Drea MERS and a clean funding bill. Result: lights out on essential services. Federal workers, over 800,000 of them, are furloughed without paychecks. National parks are locked tighter than Fort Knox, and air traffic control is a skeleton crew away from meltdown. But snap, that's the real horror show. This program isn't a handout. It's a bridge for working families, seniors on fixed incomes, and single moms juggling 2 jobs and daycare drama. It pumps $120 billion a year into local economies, keeping grocers stocked and farmers fed. Without it, we're looking at empty shelves in food banks and a spike in hunger that could rival the Great Depression's breadlines. Enter the USDA's memo, dropped like a silent grenade on Friday afternoon, prime time for burying bad news. Signed off by Secretary Brooke Rollins, Trump's pick for the ag slot, who's more at home in think tanks than on the farm. The email went out to major retailers from Walmart to your corner bodega. Retailers are prohibited from providing discounts or promotions specifically targeted to SNAP households during the funding lapse. It read, with a side of legalese about maintaining program integrity. Translation: if you're swiping an EBT card, that electronic lifeline for food stamps, you don't get the 20% off on milk or the 2-for-1 on bread. Chains like Kroger and Publix had already floated discount plans as a goodwill gesture, scraping together emergency funds to soften the blow for their most vulnerable customers. Publix, down in Florida, where Trump's got his Mar-a-Lago echo chamber, even announced a hunger relief initiative last week, promising markdowns on staples for anyone showing a declined SNAP transaction. Grocers were stepping up because, let's face it, they see the human side. Cashiers watching parents ration out $50 for a week's worth of groceries, kids eyeing candy bars they know won't make the cart. But nope. The administration swooped in with threats of audits, fines, and yanked authorizations faster than you can say, deep state paranoia. A USDA spokesperson, stone-faced on a midday briefing call, doubled down. This policy ensures fairness and prevents exploitation. Discounts could lead to higher prices elsewhere or abuse of the system. Exploitation. From who, the billion-dollar chains or the single dad choosing between diapers and dinner? Retail lobbyists are fuming. The National Grocers Association fired off a letter yesterday calling it unprecedented overreach into private business decisions. One exec from a Midwest co-op told me off the record, voice dripping with disgust. We've got families lining up at dawn, cards bouncing like bad checks. We're not profiteers, we're patriots trying to keep our communities from crumbling. This feels like punishment for being poor. By evening, the discounts were scrapped. Publix issued a quiet reversal. Kroger pulled its flyers, and smaller stores just hung their heads. The ripple, immediate and brutal. In Chicago's South Side, a food pantry reported a 40% uptick in visits overnight. Down in Houston's food deserts, lines snaked around blocks for whatever canned goods were left, and Trump. The man's fingerprints are all over this. Just hours after the memo leaked, he took to Truth Social, that digital dumpster fire he calls free speech, to pat himself on the back. SNAP benefits frozen until Democrats cave on wall funding. No games, no discounts. America first means tough choices. The radical left wants open borders. I want secure ones. Who's with me? Tough choices. For who the trillionaires golfing at his resorts or the grandma in rural Ohio deciding if her meds or her meds come first. This isn't leadership. It's leverage, plain and vicious. Roland's office echoed the boss, insisting the ban protects taxpayer dollars from potential fraud. But experts folks like the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities are calling BS. SNAP fraud rates are under 1%, their director emailed me yesterday. This isn't about integrity. It's about inflicting pain to win a negotiation. We've got contingency funds sitting idle, $4.65 billion earmarked for emergencies like this. Releasing them would cover November's full load without batting an eye. That brings us to the courts, where the real fireworks are popping and where your gut feeling about impeachment or forced funding hits the nail square. Down in Providence, Rhode Island, U.S., District Judge John McConnell, that Obama-era bulldog with a rep for not suffering fools, lit a fire under the administration last week. A coalition of cities, nonprofits, and churches sued, arguing the SNAP freeze violates the program's statutory mandate and the Constitution's spending clause. McConnell agreed, slapping a temporary restraining order on the USDA. Use the damn contingency funds or face contempt. The feds blinked at first, filing papers promising partial November payouts about 50% of the $8 billion tab by mid-month. But Trump couldn't resist the troll. Monday night, he posted, "No full SNAP until shutdown ends. Courts can't dictate policy, that's for the people." Legal scholars gasped. It's a direct thumb in the eye of judicial authority, echoing his first-term dodges on everything from emoluments to election meddling. By Tuesday, plaintiffs were back in court, demanding daily compliance reports and sanctions. "This is willful defiance," their lead attorney thundered. "People will die malnutrition, stress-induced heart attacks, suicides, and despair. The administration's betting lives on politics. Die." Yeah, that's not hyperbole, it's math. The USDA's own data shows SNAP cuts hunger by 30% in participating households. Without it, emergency rooms see a 20% spike in diet-related admissions. Think kids with stunted growth, diabetics crashing from sugar crashes. In red states like Kentucky and Mississippi, where 15% of folks are on the program, rural clinics are already overwhelmed. One nurse in Appalachia texted me a photo of her waiting room. Elderly folks with empty pill bottles saying they traded meds for ramen. And the discount ban. It amplifies the agony. A typical SNAP household gets $250 a month, that's $8 a day for 3 squares. Without deals, that buys 20% less food per feeding America's crunchers. Grocers aren't villains here, they're squeezed too, facing empty fridges and lost sales. Walmart, which serves 25% of SNAP users, lobbied quietly for waivers but got shut down cold. "We're Americans first," a company rep said in a statement that reeked of forced neutrality. But rules are rules. Zoom out, and this SNAP stranglehold exposes the rot at the heart of Trump's America First fever dream. Remember his first shutdown in 2018 to 19. That 35-day nightmare cost $11 billion and shuttered WIC clinics, leaving new moms without formula. He bragged about it then, too. "I shut it down," until polls tanked. Now, with midterms on the horizon, he's doubling down, framing it as a crusade against sanctuary city freeloaders. But the victims? They're the heartland heroes he courts at rallies. Coal miners turned warehouse stalkers, vets on VA waitlists, Black and Latino families in urban grind. Polls from Quinnipiac show his approval cratering to 37%, with independents, those swing state deciders, fleeing at 55% disapproval on the economy. Even Fox is running segments with teary-eyed farmers. "SNAP keeps my workers fed. This hurts us all." GOP senators, smelling the blood, are starting to squirm. Mitch McConnell, the old tortoise, floated a compromise bill yesterday, but Trump swatted it like a fly. "Weak." Lindsey Graham, his perpetual yes man, looked pained on a Sunday show. "We need to end this, families are suffering." Your point about killing civilians to make room for trillionaires. It lands like a haymaker because it's not far off the mark. This administration slashed corporate taxes to 15%, greenlit mega mergers for big ag like JBS and Tyson, and floated deregulating food additives that poison the poor first. SNAP's a thorn because it redistributes $1 in benefits, generates $1.50 in economic activity, mostly at local stores. Starve it, and you starve Main Street while Wall Street toasts with caviar. Trump's inner circle. Roland's a Heritage Foundation alum pushing work requirements that booted 700,000 off the rolls pre-pandemic. Howard Lutnick, his commerce pick, runs a Wall Street firm that profits from commodity spikes. Guess what happens when food demand crashes? It's a plan, all right. Consolidate wealth upward, blame the takers downward. Critics like Sen. Elizabeth Warren nailed it in a floor speech. This isn't fiscal prudence. It's class warfare with empty plates as the weapon. So, what's the off-ramp before bodies stack up? Courts are the front line. McConnell's TRO is just the opener. Similar suits are filing in California and New York, demanding full funding release under the Impoundment Control Act. If Trump keeps defying and his posts scream, he will contempt citations could fly, jailing underlings or fining the Treasury millions. Impeachment. Dreamy, but doable in a fractured house where even some blue dogs might flip for optics. Speaker Mike Johnson, sweating primaries, hinted at a bipartisan path in a closed caucus. Public pressure's the wild card. Hash feed the 42 million is exploding on X, with celebs like Oprah pledging pantry drives and unions marching on D.C. Food banks, from Second Harvest to local pantries, are in overdrive, volunteers sorting donations till midnight, trucks idling for emergency runs. In Detroit, a mom of 3 told CNN, tears streaming. My boy's 5. He asks why dinner's just rice again. Trump's got billions for walls, where's ours? Folks, this isn't abstract policy wonkery, it's visceral, stomach-churning reality. Imagine your neighbor, that quiet guy who mows his lawn twice a week, staring at a fridge with a half-gallon of milk and praying it lasts. Or the teacher in Tulsa, dipping into her own pocket for classroom snacks because her students show up hollow-eyed. Trump's gamble assumes we'll blink first, that the pain threshold for the powerless is infinite. But history says otherwise. The 2013 shutdown birthed the Tea Party backlash. This one could forge a progressive firestorm, as one activist in L.A.'s Skid Row put it. Hunger's a great equalizer, it radicalizes the fed up. Courts, Congress, citizens, it's time to force the funds, impeach the indifference, and remind this crew that power's a loan, not a license to kill dreams. We're at a tipping point, America. Trump's not just withholding checks, he's weaponizing want, betting starvation breaks spines before it breaks his. But spines, they're stealing. Discounts or not, the hungry are organizing petitions hitting 1 million signatures, boycotts brewing against compliant chains. If the administration doesn't cough up those billions by week's end, expect riots at the registers, not just rants online. And impeachment. Hell yes, let's talk brass tacks, the Constitution's remedy for high crimes like dereliction of duty. High crimes against the high chair, more like kids' empty plates as Exhibit A, this plan to make room for trillionaires. It's unraveling, thread by bloody thread. The people will eat with or without his blessing, but God help us if it comes to that. Thank you for listening.